Right.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Women Peppreneurs Podcast with your host, Mary Oquendo. So my special guest today is Dr. Sacheen Mobley. Hi.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Sacheen and I go back a little ways because
Yeah.
we are on and off accountability partners.
Yes.
Right.
On again.
On again.
On again.
Accountability partners. Which actually we want to talk about like the benefit of having somebody to keep you on track, right? But the reason I had asked Sacheen here today is because in the grooming industry, I think it attracts, first of all, a really high number of the neurodiverse, many of which are dealing with anxiety. Right. So I wanted to cover anxiety, how to deal with that, to recognize it for what it is. All right.
Excellent.
Sacheen, if you want to say a little bit about you, but if not, let's dive right into this.
Well, I am Dr. Sacheen Mobley, as Mary said, and I have anxiety. And so I speak from experience and I've written a book about it. So I definitely understand what it's like to deal with it on a daily basis and to deal with sustained and chronic anxiety and to think that there's nothing that you can do to have a good quality of life. And I'm here to tell you that that's not true. Not
Okay,
true.
very good. So let's start from the very beginning. I think when was like the first time you realized that you had anxiety? Was there like a light bulb moment on that one?
I don't know if there was a light bulb moment. It's interesting. I have always considered myself a fairly extroverted person with just introverted tendencies. So I was that person who I can organize a party, I can put things together, and then I'm going to head towards the back of the room because I don't want to have to interact with the people. So, I mean, I'll plan your wedding because I used to be a wedding planner. And then I want to sit in the corner and make sure the world doesn't fall apart. And please don't talk to me if at all possible.
Okay, all right. And here I'm speaking from somebody, I mean, throughout my life, yeah, I've definitely had bouts of anxiety, but I don't have anxiety. And I think there's a difference between the two of them.
Yes. And I think it's important. So like I said, I thought I was an extrovert with introverted tendencies. And what I realized is that, no, I hide because I'm afraid that people will not think that that I won't know what to say, that I won't have the right words. And I have a lot of exposure dealing with the public. So it never occurred to me that I had anxiety until I began to look at the patterns of my life and the kind of behaviors that I would get into. And this is what goes to your point. We all have anxiety to a certain extent in certain situations, but some people live with chronic anxiety. And what I realized is that I have anxiety, but I don't live with chronic anxiety because I'm not anxious all the time. But there are certain triggers that I begin to recognize as, oh, this is my anxiety kicking in. And it is analysis, over analyzing everything because I'm so afraid of doing the wrong thing. Spending a lot of time analyzing the future outcomes of a situation as opposed to dealing with the actual information that's right in front of me. Because what anxiety tends to do is push you to unreasonable expectations and unreasonable ends in your mind, regardless of what's happening around you. And I've done therapy over the years. And my last therapist is one who said, you don't really suffer from chronic anxiety, but you have a really high functioning situational anxiety that can sometimes cripple you. And I was like, oh, well, talk to me. So, talk to me about this. And she said, there are high functioning people who deal with things. And you're one of those people who can deal with things. Your anxiety kicks in when you get into your head and you begin to project into the future the scenarios that you're afraid of. And she said, and everyone does that. Most people, however, say, okay, whatever, I'm still going to do this thing anyway. Your anxiety prevents you from acting. And that's when I begin to understand where my anxiety starts to trigger itself. Because I don't have that all the time, but in big situations. So when I went to grad school, it triggered big time. Big time.
All right. So is there like a difference between a fear of doing something because it's new and it's different?
Yes.
Is that different from anxiety, or is that basically the same thing?
It's not the same thing. It's a great question. So when you're 16, You've never driven a car before. You're ready to learn how to drive. You're anxious and fearful, but you're excited. You are like, I want to learn how to do this, and I'm going to either take driver's ed or I'm going to let my mom or my dad teach me how to drive, and everybody's afraid. Everybody's nervous.
I'm going to interview you. The only time I have ever screamed in a car was when my daughter was driving.
Yes.
And my husband is a very, very aggressive driver. Okay.
Mhm.
I never screamed while he was driving. I screamed on the highway. My daughter merged on the fast lane, which in my estimation was not enough room for her.
Mhm.
But she did it, and I screamed. I just want to put that out there. Yes, it is fearful for everybody, but go ahead.
So that's fear, right? We are afraid of something that we do not understand how it's going to turn out. When you're 16, you don't know what it's really like to drive a 2,000-pound vehicle. So you are afraid of it, but you will embrace it because you want it and everyone's doing it. And so that fear propels you to want to get good at it. Anxiety is, I will never drive a car because I don't believe that I'm capable of driving this car safely. And it terrifies me, the thought of driving this car. Anxiety is the person who will never take the highway because they are deathly afraid of what could happen to them on the highway. So they will only ever take back roads and be 3 hours late to everything.
You know, there's a bridge somewhere in the United States, or it might be in Europe, I don't know. But apparently the bridge is so scary that there are people who will,
yes,
who make a living standing on the bridge and will drive your car over the bridge and you just be a passenger.
Yes, that's anxiety. When you will go out of your way to avoid that thing so much that you're willing to reshape your entire life to avoid it, that's anxiety.
All right,
fear propels.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, fear propels us into action because we don't want to be afraid anymore. Anxiety keeps us from acting in ways that are rational.
Okay, all right. So how then? So you have person A, person B, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to use examples of people that I work with, okay?
Yeah.
So both of them would like to be speakers,
Mm-hmm.
okay? One of them gets through that and the other person does not. So they don't make those first steps, okay?
Correct.
So the person not making the first steps is not so much fearful, but anxiety is stopping them from doing it. Where the other person who is still scared is still doing it. And that's just simply fear of something you just haven't done before.
Yes, I teach this acronym IARR, and it's intention, attention, IAAR, and intention, attention, action, repeat. When you're scared of something, you have the intention to do it, right? So you have this set intention. You turn your attention towards getting that thing done. You find the ways that will get you through it in spite of the fear. So I used to teach public speaking for a living. And I would tell my students, you're going to be afraid because all of a sudden, whereas you used to be a set of 30 eyeballs staring up, now you are being stared at by 30 sets of eyeballs. You have to make a plan in your head for how you're going to deal with the butterflies in your tummy that come with everyone's eyes on you. When you can make a plan and keep your attention focused on that plan, the next A to that is action. You take the action, you make a plan, you get up, you give the speech. And then you repeat until you get more comfortable. When you're anxious, your intention may be to speak, but your attention cannot be focused on the speaking. It's focused on, but what could go wrong? And how will I bomb? And where will I go if the world crumbles and falls apart? And the black hole's gonna open underneath me and swallow me up into it. I'm gonna fall, I'm gonna trip, I'm gonna sweat. I can't do it. And so your attention is focused on everything else but public speaking because you can't. Your brain goes into overdrive on things that are going to go wrong and all the reasons why you shouldn't. And the most important reason usually is you're just not good enough at this to do it, so just don't do it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I think what I always try to make a point is when I'm helping people to become instructors, it's like, you know what? I've made all the mistakes, and yet here I am. All right. I, with a live mic, went into the bathroom. Okay.
Mhm.
Everybody had a good laugh when I came back into the classroom. But instead of letting that, derail me from not ever speaking ever again, the difference now between anxiety and fear is that, you know what, I laughed along with it. And next time I make sure I turn off the mic before I leave the room.
Yeah, garden variety fear is natural. It's a natural response to things that you don't know or something that happens to you unexpectedly. But what we don't do with fear is we don't carry it with us. As you with the live mic, you go, oh gosh, that was embarrassing and really funny. But you don't let that cripple your next encounter.
Yes. Okay.
People with anxiety cannot move past that. So that live mic might never happen to me with someone with chronic anxiety. It may never happen to me in the moment, but it happened 10 years ago and I still cannot get over that. Therefore, I will not speak.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, how are some of the ways that you deal with your anxiety?
It's a great question. First of all, I want to say I got a comment on one of the videos that I did. I really offended someone who made a point to say that I must not have real anxiety because the things that I was talking about that help me don't really help. And I always like to remind people that anxiety looks very different in everybody. There is no one size anxiety that fits over all of us to say, if you have these, if you do X, Y, and Z, or you don't do A, B, and C, then you have anxiety. Well, you could do X and Z and be just as anxious as the person who does A and B. So what works for me is learning the systems that I put in place to understand my triggers that make me the most anxious. And like I said, I used to believe that I was this extroverted introvert. I'm really not. I'm highly introverted who needs her downtime. When I don't have enough of my own me time, every situation that may cause fear also causes anxiety because I'm less sure of myself. So I have to make a point to be very careful to protect an environment of peace in myself. Now, how do you do that every day when you're dealing with hundreds of people? When I was out in the world before the pandemic happened and I was dealing with people all the time, I have a hard boundary against my time. I have a very hard boundary that says from this time to this time, if I'm out in the world, I need an hour to myself. I don't care what else is happening. I need that hour to myself. I like to sit in a coffee shop. I like to read a book. I like to have a croissant and a chai, and I like to not be bothered. That's my reset. It allows me in that moment to say, how are things going? Because checking in is really important. How are things going with me? Is there something that I need to take care of? Am I avoiding something because I'm anxious? And is there something that I can do about that before I go to my next thing? So you want to think about where you are most comfortable and give yourself permission to be in that space every single day.
Right. And that is just generally good advice, period. We're coming up on probably the busiest season for professional pet groomers. All right. Mm-hmm. And I used to make myself nuts. I mean, because you know what? Let's face it, money's good.
Money's good. Yeah.
Money's really good, and people tend to be a little bit more generous with tips around the holidays as well, too. So you can really overdo it. And I've overdone it many times. And I think, and I had basically a come to Jesus meeting with myself. What's wrong with this? And I don't suffer from anxiety, but even still, there had to be a hard line.
Yes.
And for me, that was, I was going through and I was getting rid of receipts, 7 years, everything goes into a bin and it's the end of the year. So I had the bin open, ready to put all of that year's stuff into the bin so I could do the taxes and stuff like that. And well, apparently 7 years later, when I was going through the bin to start getting rid of stuff, I found 4 $100 bills.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it was really nice. But the point being, I was so crazed working that I'm just like literally throwing money and checks on my table and did not notice I shorted myself $400.
$400. Yeah.
Okay. And $400, that was, let's talk about $400 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was really a light bulb moment for me that stopped doing that to myself. I didn't enjoy the holidays. I was tired. I was more prone to getting sick.
Yes.
Right? So I started to build into my day actual lunch period.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So I stopped. Sometimes it was at being mobile is awesome because I'm all over. That meant I knew where all the good delis and, restaurants were. I also know where all the good picnic spots were. We have lakes galore, So taking that time in the middle of the day when I'm doing my schedule, that yes, this is the time I'm going to stop. But this is a bring your lunch type of day, and is a sit down in a nice little place and just chill out and enjoy my lunch. And I found when I did that my day was so much better. I wasn't coming home. I didn't feel like I was on that hamster wheel.
Yes. And when you suffer from anxiety, that hamster wheel is always going in your head. You're always trying to anticipate. And because you're constantly in a state of anticipation, you're not in the moment. And you miss so much in the moment that could actually make life easier for you if you could come back to the moment. And so the second thing I like to tell people to do is come back to the moment. Ask yourself, am I okay? Is there a danger in this moment that has me feeling this way? Is there a physical threat to my safety or well-being that is causing me to feel crazy? Or am I just hungry or tired or thirsty?
Okay. So coming up on the holidays again, when you're scheduling for the holiday appointments and what, you don't have to groom every pet just because they called you. You don't. All right. We're not going to discuss proper pricing or anything like that. You can say no. All right. And look at your coworkers. All right. Look at them before starting. You can see the stress level is building up, that their anxiety is bubbling a little bit. So I think you ought to, so if a shop has got multiple people, what might be a plan to put in place to pay attention to everybody?
I think so. If I were, when I used to work for a pastor in a church ages ago, wedding planning was one of the duties. When I get overwhelmed, I used to teach my team, okay, sometimes I need to walk away and you need to let me walk. But how will you know that, right? How will you be able to tell that I am reaching my limit here? And it may sound silly, but I would start to hum a song. And when they heard me humming, they knew that I was reaching kind of a point where I needed to walk away for a few minutes. So if you work in a team of people, you can give each other clues that your clients are never going to recognize as being something important happening that's being communicated, but the clients don't know that. Maybe you have a certain type of dog that you all decide that when I say, oh my gosh, not another Labradoodle, that's the key that I need to step away for a minute. I don't know anything about Labradoodles. So if it's not a Labradoodle, it could be anything, but you can give yourselves that kind of spoken but unspoken cue of, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. I need to step back for 5 or 10 minutes. Can you step in and help me?
All right. And what about maybe somebody who's not recognizing they need to step back?
So when you are gripped in the middle of an anxiety attack, and I'm assuming that's what we're talking about, is you're in that. And that's why I say you have to stop and ask yourself just the basic questions.
And I don't remember who told me this. All right.
Okay.
But they had a squeaky duck. So whenever they noticed somebody was accelerating a little bit, they'd all squeak the duck.
That could work as long as that person doesn't mind.
Okay, that might be a sound issue, but I think what happened there is that it stopped it because the focus went someplace else for a second.
Yeah, if you're with other people, there are so many things that you can do if you work in a team that allows you to support each other and help you get through those moments. But if you're on your own, say you're in your mobile van and it's just you, and you can feel like you're dealing with a client who maybe just triggers you. And in that moment, you've got to figure out what's happening, because you're starting to feel out of control. That's the thing about anxiety attacks. You just start to feel like I'm not in control of this moment. and I need to get back to being in control. And that's when I'm a toucher. I have a particular kind of stone that I rub my thumb into the groove of, which allows me to remember to ground myself in the moment. Come back to my questions. Am I physically in danger at this moment? Nope, I'm just anxious. Have I had enough water yet today? Because dehydration and anxiety are mortal enemies. And you will find yourself very quickly spiraling into anxiety when you are hungry and thirsty. Do I need to have a snack? And if this client triggers me enough like this, do I need to maybe make this my last session with them? And make the decision to put your mental health before the client's needs. But to come back to the moment, you want to have things that you can do, whether that's the squeaky toy, as you said, whether it's a particular song that you can play that helps you get back into the zone of your space, whether it's the stone that I use, whether it's I'm just going to take a step out of the van, I'm going to take a deep breath, I'm going to do 10 squats, I'm going to walk around the van 5 times. You got to displace that energy so that you can calm down.
Okay.
Period. You've got to displace that energy, because if you don't displace that energy, it just continues to build.
All right. And there's just one crystal person to another. What kind of stone do you have?
I'm sorry?
What kind of stone do you have?
It's a carnelian stone.
I like carnelian. I have, I always have a stone in my pocket. If I have pockets, I guarantee you there's a stone in it.
Yep.
But when I was working, I usually had like a pyrite. I have a lot of hearts in the house. So pyrite, it is like I had a plate of them, and then when I would leave in the morning, I would just glance at the plate and saying, I want that one. But I definitely had a carnelian heart there. Amethyst was another one. Selenite. Right. What else did I have? Rose quartz. And I think that's about it. There's a couple of hearts on a plate. Oh, it's very pretty.
So this is one of those things where, see, it's very smooth.
Yep.
It becomes this rhythmic, it breaks the tension in your body.
Yes.
To do something else. So having something like even smaller than this in your pocket or on a chain around your neck to bring the energy down.
Yep. Polished stones are good because they have that smooth thing. And it's like a fidget toy, isn't it?
Perfect. It's a fidget toy for crystal lovers. For the stone lovers in us. That's right. Because I don't like the fidget spinners. They drive me crazy. I don't like the way they move. I don't like how they feel. But man, I can take one of these and be like, okay, I'm good now. And this to a client doesn't look odd. It's just something in my pocket.
Yeah.
It's very innocuous. It's very private.
It is. So something to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, because you don't want to appear anxious, right? But you want to bring your anxiety down. Well, if you just reach into your pocket because you're just chatting and you all of a sudden you're just you've got a stone in your hand and you're moving and you're talking and they don't realize that I'm also rubbing my stone.
Yeah, you know what? And my clients would never have thought twice about me waving a stone around.
Right. But if you're not someone who's like, well, I've never had a stone in my hand, maybe they'll think I'm weird. They won't. Just put it in your pocket.
No, seriously, I guarantee you, they won't.
No, they won't.
Sometimes Absolutely. The conversation goes, "Ooh, that's pretty."
Yes. You can do the mandala beads. If you're into the beads, that's a good one too, because you can just tick through the beads around your wrist or around your necklace. I have 2 necklaces that I use.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So we're going to take a quick commercial break.
I know.
Those who are watching, we edit the commercials in later.
Yes.
Okay, so back to topic. So we had a couple questions.
Yeah.
All right. When a couple groomers realized, I'm just going to read them to you. All right.
Okay.
And you tell me what your thoughts on. Okay. So just overcoming the paralyzing circle I find myself in often. I'm going through all the what ifs at lightning speed. So not exactly a specific scenario overall, but one recent example that she was standing on a bridge in Austin, Texas. They were waiting for the bats to wake up and go out. And every single person walking past me made her think or imagine that this is the one who's going to push me over the railing and into the water. Every single car zooming past brings a vivid picture of it careening into me somehow. This is a consistent and frequent state of mind I find myself in. It's exhausting and I can't stop myself from doing it.
So I read this question earlier when we were supposed to do this last week, and I was going to respond there, but I decided to wait. There are two things I want to say. Number one, if you do not have a therapist, I would highly recommend one, because a cognitive behavioral therapist can teach you things that I don't have the space and time to teach you here, on how to rein in the runaway thoughts and feelings that may overwhelm you. What I can tell you is there are several small things that you can do in the moment, but what you absolutely need is a cognitive shift. And that shift takes time to get to. When you are overwhelmed like that, I can tell you that the best thing that you need to do is breathe through it, come back to the moment, ask yourself. The reason that I mentioned the 3 questions, am I in danger? Is this happening to me now? It's because that's what my therapist taught me. Am I in danger right now? Is this a current situation of fear, or am I projecting something in the future coming back to hurt me? These are the things that I learned through therapy to help to change my cognitive behavior around a situation. And so back to you standing. If you find in the moment, if you find in the moment that the best thing that you can, that the only thing that you can do is breathe, then you breathe. Because I guarantee you, you're also not breathing or hyperventilating because you're terrified of what's happening. So number one, you have to stop and breathe. And I know that sounds so simple, but people hold their breath all day. They literally hold their breath all day. Once you can figure out that your body is breathing, then your brain kicks in again. So let me get all sciencey on you. The minute you stop breathing, and we go, oh my gosh, deer caught in headlights, big eyes, my chest is tight, I'm constricted, I'm now like this because I'm terrified and I don't know what to do. Relax the jaw, relax the shoulders, soften the brow. Okay, now your brain's like, okay, I should probably keep breathing. This is a good thing. It starts to breathe. It lowers your heart rate. It brings down your cortisol level. It decreases your blood stops pulsing in your ears and retreats back into your body. So now your eyes are able to look around and assess the situation for what it is and not what you're afraid it's becoming. Because anxiety, and true anxiety, creates a physical response in the body. That's what shuts us down. We can't do anything because our bodies stop functioning. So the first thing you have to do is get your body to start functioning again. And the easiest way to do that, well, I mean, you could run up and down the bridge, but that might look a little odd. So I talk about breath work a lot and doing the breath work necessary to keep your anxiety under control. And the first thing I say is, if you're not breathing, then you're not going to do anything, because you're starving your brain of all the oxygen that it needs to make a decision of whether or not you're actually in trouble or if you're just anxious. Because that car racing down the bridge, odds are not going to careen into you, but you will have no way of figuring that out until your brain can re-engage. Those people walking towards you probably don't even see you, but you will have no way of believing that or even ascertaining a threat until you're able to re-engage. And when you are in the grips of that kind of emotion, you cannot engage. So the first thing is bring down your breathing. Deep breath, not hyperventilation does not lead to a solution. Won't give you one, but a deep breath, a calming breath. And I say, Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow. And everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. Do it 3 times. By the end of Mary and the little lamb on the 3rd time, you will find that you are no longer racing. Even though you might still be anxious, you're no longer racing. And then you're able to look around and assess, okay, my intention is to stand on this bridge. I need to be on this bridge safely. My intention is to look for the things that will make it safe to be on this bridge. What can I do? Action. What can I do to make me feel safe in this moment? Maybe I just go wait in my car. Maybe I go sit down because standing makes me feel too anxious. Maybe I get off the bridge. Maybe I just get off the bridge because I don't want to be here anyway. And I take a deliberate action in service to my intention to be safe in this moment. And then I repeat until I feel better.
Okay. So second question.
That was a lot, sorry.
That was a lot. Is procrastination a form of anxiety?
Absolutely. Procrastination is a form of everything. Absolutely everything. Procrastination is an undercurrent for fear. It's an undercurrent for overachievers. It's an undercurrent for underachievers. Everything that you can think of, procrastination is a symptom of. When it comes to anxiety, it is absolutely a symptom. Absolutely. Now, how do I know the difference then? It doesn't matter if you are procrastinating. It doesn't matter if you're doing it because you're anxious, afraid of achievement, afraid of failing, or anything else. It makes literally no difference. If you are procrastinating, you are avoiding something. So the question just needs to become, how do I stop procrastinating? How do I do that?
What are you avoiding?
That becomes the question. What don't you believe you want to get accomplished here? Because procrastination is about belief. And it's either I believe I am not going to do well enough at this, or I believe someone can do it better than I can, or I believe that someone's going to say I don't do it very well. This is about a belief that you're holding about yourself. That's why you don't do it. I'm a master at procrastination. Let me just point out, this is why I have accountability partners, because I will procrastinate something to the last possible moment.
Yes, so let's talk about accountability partners here. Okay. So Sacheen and I have different reasons for being accountability partners.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Sacheen, why do you want me as an accountability partner?
Well, first of all, because I love you. I mean, come on. Seriously.
I love you too.
Because I reached out for an accountability partner because I know me very well. And when I am ready to take my life to the next plane, I cannot get there alone. And so I wanted someone to help me be accountable for the things that I'm really good at, but also someone who would say, I don't think you're pushing yourself hard enough. I think that you're not asking a bigger question. And so I wanted someone who would be in accountability with me, who could say, I see this differently than you. And that's really important in accountability partners, I think. I don't need someone to say yes to everything to me as we think the same. It's fine. No, I also need someone who's like, I don't think like you do. So let me tell you what I see from my perspective. Yeah. Because I want growth.
All right. So you're from somebody with anxieties. I don't have anxiety.
Correct.
So for me, an accountability helps me to bounce ideas off and help form them into better things. Whether or not what I'm trying to do actually makes sense, or maybe you have an easier way for me to get there, or something that maybe I did not think of. So the point being, accountability partners are just, when you find a good one, because I've had bad accountability partners.
Yes, as have I.
So accountability partners means you have somebody that is consistent. We meet every week at the same time, and there's times we didn't feel like doing it.
Nope. But we do it anyway.
We do it anyway.
And as someone with anxiety, because I do understand my own triggers, I know that I will procrastinate if I don't have someone saying, so what did you do? Wait, we've talked about this for 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
3 weeks now. So and that is important, because when you suffer from anxiety and you get caught in your own loop, weeks can pass and you don't even realize weeks are passing because you are stuck in your own loop. You are stuck in that spiral that just keeps, it's like a tornado, right? Like eventually you start out with a little thing that you're avoiding because you're anxious about it. And before you know it, you have an F5 that's over a mile wide because no one was there to say, hang on, like we've been talking about this for like 5 weeks. What are we doing here? And this is why I want to stress that everyone's anxiety looks different. For some people, being in an accountability group is very scary. It makes them more anxious because of somebody saying to them what may feel like, oh, I'm failing. Criticism may feel like a form of failure. And it's very important to pick an anxiety partner that honors how you are. I'm not someone for whom criticism is a problem, but there are people for whom the mere thought of someone criticizing them or calling them to account makes them more anxious. So you've got to pick the right person for you.
Yes. All right. So before we go on to the next, I do want to point out here that you've actually written a book on anxiety, correct?
Yes, it's called The Anxiety Solution by Dr. Sacheen Mobley, and you can find it on Gumroad.
Gumroad.com?
Gumroad.com. I'll shoot you a link so that you have it. It's a digital book. It's not an actual physical book yet.
Okay. But you know what? We're working on that, right? Becoming a
We are working on that. Yes.
Yes, at this point, I guarantee you there are people listening who are shaking their head and going, yeah, we know.
We're working on that. We're working on that. It's on the stack.
Okay, so then I think maybe we might have answered this question, but I'm just going to bring it up here. Okay. Oh, actually, maybe not. Ask her the physiological difference between nervous and excited.
Ooh, okay. So I'm going to take this to relationships because I think this is probably the best analogy that I can think of. I get so excited for new relationships. The anticipation of not knowing what's coming, the desire to want to be around a new person, whether it's a friend or a romantic relationship or whatever, you know, this desire to want to know a new person, but to also, you know, want to be seen and taken in the right way. And so there's a little bit of nervousness in that excitement. Will they accept me? Will they like me? Will they see me as I want to be seen? Excitement is, I want to know you and I want to get to know you, and I'm going to give you my full attention because I know nothing about you and I think you are fantastic. Nervous is, will you like me too? My nerves will dance a little bit with fear because will you like me too? I'm excited because I want to get to know you because I don't know you, but I'm nervous, will you like me too? So that's the best way I can differentiate. Excitement is usually not tinged with fear. Nervousness is tinged with fear.
Okay.
Because nervousness brings with it the fear of rejection.
All right. So we have the last question on the post is, I have a lot of trauma from past jobs, all related to dealing with abusive bosses and managers. Every time a new problem with management comes up, I automatically start freaking out and assuming the worst, including temptation to quit on the spot. Point, I know not to take action until I've calmed down and accurately assess the situation for what it is. But the initial reaction is so extreme and so exhausting, I would like to curb it as best I can. I've been diagnosed with GAD for most of my life. I am on medication daily and as needed for panic attacks. And I have a therapist I speak to frequently. Any other suggestions?
If you've been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and you're still feeling as though the trigger is too hard, then if your therapist isn't doing cognitive behavioral reassessment, I would get a new therapist. Because if you're in therapy for GAD and you do not have a way to function that prevents that trigger from hitting you like this, then you're not getting the right therapy. And I say that as someone who's been in therapy, who's been through years of therapy, who's changed therapists when I felt like perhaps I've outgrown that therapist and we're just not in the same place anymore. Functionally speaking, to get through the moments, your therapist should have been teaching you cognitive ways to switch that trigger to, as I like to say, to pull the wiring out of that trigger. And if they haven't, then it's time for a new therapist. And what I won't do, all apologies, is try to diagnose that for you in this very short space here, because that is not my wheelhouse and I would not want to do damage where damage doesn't need to be done. But I will firmly advocate and say that if you're still feeling that and you are in therapy and you're still in that place where confrontation of that type brings with you that trigger, that hard trigger, then you need a behavioral therapist, someone who specializes in behavioral readjustment so that that doesn't hit you like a ton of bricks every single time.
Okay.
That's
All
what
right.
I would.
Good. And the last thing was more of a comment, but I think we've already covered that already about how
Okay.
to help others. Well, maybe we can. All right, here's 2-point question. How do
Mhm,
we help others with anxiety? It's not something she deals with, but I know others do. Or how to
mhm.
help a client that has anxiety when dropping off their dog to be groomed, for example. Okay. I'm just going to do the scenario for you. All
Go
right.
for it. Yeah.
Fluffy. Let me get Fluffy. Hold on.
I love show and tell. This is great.
Show and tell for people who are watching.
Yes.
Fluffy. Okay.
Yes.
And they're hanging on to their dog. Okay.
Mhm.
And obviously they're fearful, and it's
Yes.
now impacting the dog because the dog feels
Yes.
the anxiety of the owner, which now makes this dog just a little bit. We were doing a bleeding demonstration with.
Poor
So now
Fluffy.
there's this dog is now highly is feeling the anxiety of the owner. He becomes a more difficult groom because of that. Okay.
Okay. People with anxiety are hyper aware. If you have anxiety, the one thing that you pride yourself on is understanding what's happening in your surroundings. But they're really not hyper aware of themselves. They're hyper aware of a potential outside threat. So your pet owner is scanning the horizon for the threat, and you have to be non-threatening. How do you become non-threatening to someone who's scanning the horizon for the threat that's not coming? But that's not what anxiety is. It's not about what's actually happening. It's about what could happen. That's so nerve-wracking. So I would make soft, sustained eye contact if they will look at you, because the chances are they're looking at everything but you, because you're the source right now of their trigger. They don't know you, you're a stranger, they're afraid you're going to hurt their dog. They got 1,001 thoughts going through their head that don't make any sense to you, and don't worry about it. If you can get them to make eye contact with you, not a hard gaze, because that's going to feel threatening, but a soft gaze, one where you're still blinking in natural eye movement. And if they will look at you sustained, they will start to mirror your breathing. Breathe with them. If they will look at you, they will begin to breathe with you. It's sympathetic response. And what you're trying to do is get them to calm down enough to say in a very nice and soft voice, because they're anxious, tell me what you're afraid of. Tell me how I can help you to not be afraid in this moment. Can I hold your hand? And can I show you everything that's going to happen? Can I give you something that will allow you to not feel as though you are giving over your precious animal to someone who doesn't love it as much as you do? Because I do. And as you modulate your voice down an octave and you breathe with them, their sympathetic response will be to relax, because they want to trust you. They just don't know you. And even if they've seen you 1,000 times, they still don't know you. And so the quickest way to get that sympathetic response going is to make soft, sustained eye contact, and then have them begin to mirror your breathing. And as you see them relax, then just talk to them.
Okay. So another scenario that I've seen several groomers have a problem with is is actually answering phone calls.
Yes, that phone call. And why don't, it's 2022. Who's calling people? Just text me, for God's sakes. Come on. I am not a phone talker, so I appreciate this fact. But here's the thing. Unless you have to return that phone call right away, let that sucker sit. Go get yourself a drink of something wonderful, a chai, glass of wine, whatever makes you happy. Get a comfy chair. Put your feet up. Relax. Make the phone call. Do not make that phone call when you are anxious. Don't make that phone call until you have given your environment a chance to calm you down. And what you can do, just like we said at the very beginning, when you set a time on a hard boundary to give yourself permission during the day for a break, you can also set a hard boundary for when you're going to respond to phone calls, and say from this time to this time, unless it's an emergency, right? And I have to answer right now. But if these are phone calls that are piling up because I'm working, then I can say every day from, I don't know, 4 to 4:30, I'll check messages. And if there are phone calls that have to be returned, I will schedule that as well. Because being in control makes you feel less out of control. So bring some control into the day.
On outgoing messages, you can be really clear. You could say, phone calls are returned within office hours of this and this on the days that we're working. Or for a faster response, text me.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. And keep a second line. I'm assuming you have a business line and a personal line. Let people know the business line is checked from this time to this time. Anything that comes in after this time will not be returned to the next day.
Yes. All right. So it's just, it's just setting those boundaries and sticking to them. All right.
Yes.
And I'm going to offer up another suggestion. All right. If you really cannot do the phone call, if you really can't, okay, hire somebody to do it.
I was going to say the same thing. Outsource that puppy.
Yeah.
It's 2022. Hire yourself a VA that does nothing but answer your phone calls once a week or once a day.
Yeah. There are people who do it. I have a VA. She's awesome. You know what?
Yes.
She takes a couple tasks off my plate that I don't have to deal with.
Yes. There's somebody out there who loves talking on the phone. Pay them to do it.
Yes.
And there's no shame in saying
that could be your ad. Do you love talking to people on the phone?
Yes.
Well, then I've got a job for you.
I will pay you 10 hours a week to come and 1 hour, hour and a half a day. And then let people know calls will be returned during this time on every day. And that person's job is to return the phone call. That's it. This is the beautiful thing about being anxious in 2022, right?
Yeah.
There are so many ways that you actually don't have to do the thing that makes you anxious anymore. You just don't have to do it.
Yep. You just set up a script for them. You set up the parameters for under what circumstances you take a pet for grooming.
Yes.
And have at it.
Yes. Yes, it's really important, especially if you're someone who suffers from anxiety. And there's a spectrum of anxiety all the way up to generalized anxiety disorder, which is within the DSM, down to garden variety everyday anxiety. But here's the thing. No matter where you fall on the spectrum of being anxious, whether it's situational or chronic, there is a way for you to overcome that gives you a better quality of life. And some of that is just boundary setting. Some of that are places where you can get, that you can take yourself and bring yourself back to yourself. Some of that is breathing exercises. Some of that is getting therapy. Some of that is reminding yourself every hour to drink water because you're dehydrated and really you're not anxious, you're just hangry, which looks a lot like anxiety in the moment because your mind is spinning and your thoughts are racing and you really just need a Snickers.
Yeah, we end up, sometimes we record the other podcast on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. my time. And if I didn't get a chance to have dinner beforehand, that means I'm not having dinner to afterwards. And it'll be like, we need to end this up because I'm hungry.
Yes.
I'm starting to get annoyed.
Exactly. And when you're anxious and hungry, you can hang it up. I don't want to, not only do I not want to talk to you anyway, now I really don't want to talk to you because my anxiety is through the roof because I don't know about you, but when I'm hungry and thirsty, my ability to have articulate conversations deteriorates rather rapidly.
I have to agree with you. It's like, you know what? I'm no longer paying attention. The only thing I'm thinking is that I did not eat dinner yet. And I still have
Exactly. And so that's why one of the questions that I always ask is, what have you had to drink today?
Yeah.
Have you eaten anything in the past 2 hours? Are you sure that this is a cliffhanger moment or are you just hungry?
Yeah. See, here's the thing, right? Because right now I'm like smack in the middle of the whole 30 diet. All right.
Yes.
So it's not like I could just go grab something really fast to eat. It doesn't work that way for at least the next, I'm into day 12, at least for the next 18 days. I can't just go grab like a protein bar or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. So all that to say, we have smartphones. Set yourself a notification that says drink now. You know, give yourself all the tools at your disposal. If you wear one of the little smart watches, you know, program into it. Have you eaten? Have you eaten yet? When's the last time you've eaten? If you're in the midst of an episode, get your smartphone out and play some music. Bring things with you into your day that will give you the relief that you need in the moment.
All right. So where are some of the places that if somebody wanted to follow you on Facebook or social media?
Well, I am on Facebook under Dr. Sacheen, and then there's a whole page for the anxiety solution. I'm most active there. And so you can find me on Facebook under Dr. Sacheen, DrSacheen. I'm all over the place. I also have a YouTube channel that is Dr. Sacheen. I kept this really easy, really easy. If you type in Dr. Sacheen on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, you're going to find me. So that's where you can follow me over. If you happen to do TikTok and you like little snippets of anxiety support and messages throughout your day, my handle is Pineapple Needs Pizza.
Yes, thank you.
That is my handle.
That is one of the hills I will die on.
Yes. That's what I said. I was like, I need a handle that's going to stand out and a hill that I'm willing to die on, and daggone it, Pineapple Meets Pizza. Therefore, if you want a little bit of levity and some fun scenery in the background and a 1 to 2 minute motivational, it's okay to be anxious, I'm still here for you, follow me on TikTok.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on TikTok. I'm not doing a whole lot with that at the moment because
yeah, it's a lot.
You know what? There's 24 hours in a day.
That's right. It's a lot. It's a lot. Okay.
You know, and I also want to make mention that Positive Educational Training is doing a neurodiversity summit in March of next year, March of 2023. And Dr. Sacheen will be teaching at the summit. So thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to it.
So everybody join us next week when I interview another woman making a difference in the pet industry.